Welcome back. Well, we just gave you a rundown of the highlights from Saturday's regular season finale games. Now to break those down a little more and talk playoffs, I'm joined by our NSIC guru.
That's too strong a word.
David, you are a guru. But David, first of all, we got to check in on you. 18 games, and you have finally wrapped up the regular season in the terms of broadcasting. But how do you feel?
Tired, but happy. It was a fun season doing Thursday night football. It was really fun. More than 8,000 miles on the road, but I'll take it because it was so much fun.
Well, that's good. Just had to check in. All right, well, we're gonna talk some football. So playoff time, and the NSIC gets 3 teams into the playoffs. In Super Region 4, Minnesota State number 2, Winona State number 4, and Sioux Falls at number 6. I read your Twitter a little bit, but did the committee get it right?
They got some things right, but not all things right. I'm glad that Sioux Falls still remained in the field. That was sort of the big question. After losing the final weekend of the regular season to Minnesota State, they were number 5 before the weekend, so for USF, dropping to number 6 seems fair with a 9-2 overall record. Winona State was number 4 heading into the weekend. Warriors blew out Augustana on the last Thursday night football game of the year, so staying at number 4 to me is also fair for the Warriors because Augustana wasn't a tough opponent record-wise and really didn't aid the Warriors' strength of schedule. But here we go. Minnesota State at number 2. I'll be honest, it's an absolute joke. This committee should be ashamed of themselves. And I'm not even saying that facetiously. There is zero justifiable reason for Minnesota State to drop from number 1 in the region before the weekend to number 2 after the weekend when they beat Sioux Falls, a fellow playoff team, on the road for some reason that I'm still struggling with. Central Washington out of the Great Northwest Athletic Conference, who was number 2 in the region, leapfrogged them to number 1. But here are the facts. Minnesota State beat USF on the road. USF was the 5 seed going into that game. Central Washington beat Humboldt State on the road. Humboldt State was the 10 seed in that region going in. So Minnesota State defeats a better team with a better pedigree, and they fall. Selection committees, I admit, they're not always perfect, but there is zero rational explanation, and there's zero mathematical criteria that can convince me or anyone else that Minnesota State's the number 2 seed. They should be number 1 and getting that first round bye. Now they have to play this weekend. They can't get all their guys healthy. They have to play against number 7 Colorado State Pueblo. To me, it's inexcusable, and at some point, these committees, they're going to have to explain their rationale. We've dealt with this in Division 2. We've dealt with this in Division 1. I don't have a dog in this fight, but for the Mavericks' sake, I really hope they get a chance to prove on the field why the committee made a mistake.
Strong words from a strong man.
I wouldn't
Captain Insano.
I wouldn't call myself a strong man, but I appreciate the strong words.
Oh my goodness, I had to say it. Okay, but there's another team that got caught in the crossfire too.
Yeah, Minnesota Duluth, and I think the Bulldogs got a bit of a raw deal. They made an incredible push late in the season to make the playoffs. They topped UMary on Saturday to finish the regular season 9-2. They were the 8 seed in the region before the weekend. Needed some help to crack that top 7. They got it when Colorado Mesa out of the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, which was 6th in the region, lost on Saturday. But with this new Super Region 4 alignment, the RMAC gets an automatic qualifier for the postseason. And the committee gave that to CSU Pueblo, who wasn't even in the top 10 last week. On some level, you can understand it because if you win your conference, you probably should get a playoff spot. But taking a team outside the top 10 over a team that was previously 8th in UMD just doesn't seem right from a principle-based standpoint. Rules are rules, and this makes sense purely from an automatic qualifying perspective. But think about this. Last year, the NSIC was in Super Region 3 with only 2 other conferences. Now they're in Super Region 4 with 3 other conferences. By virtue of that, they lose a playoff spot because of the realignment and automatic qualifiers. If the NSIC were still in Super Region 3, Minnesota Duluth would be a playoff team this season. As such, they have to get the consolation prize of the 12th game, the Mineral Water Bowl, which they'll play on December 2nd against Central Missouri. So it's tough. I'm a little bit biased, obviously. I've seen UMD multiple times this season. I think they're playoff worthy. I think they should be in the postseason. But the realignment, the automatic qualifying procedures, and obviously that 1-2 start to the season made things really tough for the Bulldogs to overcome. But if anything, all this does is heighten the new reality for teams next season in the NSIC. You can afford 1 loss at most if you want to make the playoffs, 2, and you're kind of pushing it.
Yeah, it's a great conference. And I mean, those 2 losses at the beginning of the season, 2 very good teams.
To Sioux Falls and Minnesota State, who are in the playoff field.
So it's tough. I thought the Bulldogs deserved to make it.
They did deserve to make it, honestly. But
we're not on the committee, David.
We aren't on the committee. We can't change everything as much as we want to.
Okay, we're going to take a step back.
I'll calm down
we're going to calm down to the non-playoff situation of the non-qualifying teams in the Northern Sun. Looking at this past weekend's finale, Which win impressed you the most?
Honestly, it was Minot State. They ended the season on a really high note, a 23-13 win on the road at St. Cloud State, who once led the NSIC North Division back in October. With that win, the Beavers finished 3-8 this season. Last year, they were also 3-8, but this honestly feels light years better than when they ended 2016. Keep this in mind. Here are a couple of quirky stats from the year. All three of Minot State's wins this season were on the road. They had only won 3 games on the road combined since 2013 before this season. 4 of the Beavers' 8 losses, half of them were by 1 possession, 8 points or less. You flip those around, Minot State is 7-4 instead of 3-8. New head coach Mike Aldrich, former coach at Augustana, he helped solidify a great pass defense that finished among the top 5 in the NSIC. They like to use that slogan, build the dam, up in Minot for obvious Beaver-related reasons. But to continue the metaphor, the planks of a foundation, they're being laid right now. There's a sense of direction and a sense of purpose in Minot, which we honestly haven't seen in quite a while. There's still a ways to go. They're going to need to find some more offensive playmakers. They simply weren't reliable down the stretch. From a receiving standpoint specifically, they did have a good running back in Larry Overstreet, but he's graduating. And that rush defense is going to need to be shore up to help the Beavers make them a complete defensive unit, because they do have a good pass defense. But like I said, optimism is bright in Minot. Year 2 in the Mike Aldrich era is going to be very interesting to see. Things are looking up in North Dakota.
They are, and we're gonna go back to playoffs now. So are you cooled down?
I'm cooled down a little bit.
I'm not, but anyways. So here are the matchups. Number 6 Sioux Falls on the road at number 3 Midwestern State in Wichita Falls, Texas. 4 Winona State is hosting number 5 Texas A&M Commerce, and number 2 Minnesota State hosting number 7, like you mentioned, Colorado State Pueblo. So looking at that, which one is the toughest matchup, do you think?
Well, it's fairly obvious from a seeding standpoint, but Sioux Falls is going to have a tall task going on the road against Midwestern State in Texas. The Mustangs are one of the highest scoring teams in the nation. They average more than 47 points per game. Conversely, USF is one of the best defensive teams in the nation. They hold opponents to just 11.5 points per game, so obviously something has got to give. We'll see which unit in terms of this strength-on-strength matchup will come out on top. But the one thing that USF can do to pull off the upset, run the football. Midwestern State is 8th out of the 9-team Lone Star Conference in rush defense, while the Cougars have one of the best rushing attacks in all of Division II. Max Mickey still has yet to return from his foot injury. There was some hope he would come back for that season finale against Minnesota State. That didn't come to fruition. We'll see if he can give it a go this week in the playoffs, and if he does, Kelly, that's a dynamic Midwestern State may not be ready for. Sioux Falls has to stick to the formula it's used all season long to pull this one out. The proof will be in the pudding on Saturday, but there is definitely an opportunity here for the Cougars to play spoiler, run the ball, play great defense, and USF can move on to the second round, and we'll see if they can do that on Saturday. But they do have the tallest task of the 3 NSIC teams in the field.
Yeah, they definitely do, but it would be great to see Max Mickey come back.
It would be great.
They've
Senior season, he's been a great running back in his 4 years for USF. It'd be nice to see him come back for this playoff game.
Very true. Well, postseason play is starting not just for football, but volleyball as well.
Absolutely.
And the conference tournament for the NSIC starts Wednesday, so we can take a look at the bracket here. Top-seeded Concordia St. Paul looking to repeat its national championship from last year and win its 9th national title in the last 11 years. But there's more than just the Golden Bears in this tournament, David. They got a little challenge coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said it for years if you watch the old Northern Sun experience. This is the most cutthroat tournament in Division II. That's more cutthroat than the region tournament or the national tournament. Here's why. 7 of the top 8 in this NSIC tournament are in the national top 25 coaches poll, and the other team, Upper Iowa's receiving votes. As of now, there are only 5 teams projected to make the region tournament. Concordia St. Paul, of course, Southwest Minnesota State, Northern State, Minnesota Duluth, and Winona State. It happens every year, Kelly, but a top 25 team, or 2 or 3 from the NSIC, they're not going to even make the postseason. A couple of years ago, we had 2 top 5 teams in the country in the NSIC who didn't make the postseason because of early losses in the conference tournament. Believe me, there are no upsets in this 8-team bracket. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. It'll be interesting to see who makes it out. You could see an 8-versus-1 upset with Wayne State over Concordia St. Paul. That would not surprise me in the slightest. The NSIC volleyball tournament is something to keep an eye out for, one of the best D2 conference tournaments in all the country.
Yeah, the Northern Sun is so talented across all sports. And
Absolutely.
Basketball coming up too.
Basketball in a couple of weeks. It's already started with non-conference play, but we got that coming up in December as well.
It does. Well, great stuff, David. I mean, your NSIC coverage has been fantastic throughout the football season all year. Been looking forward to this every Tuesday, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, well, when we come back, we'll send it down to Vermillion, where Jay Elson sits in with Coyote football head coach Bob Nielsen to recap this weekend's game up in Fargo and look to the week ahead. Stay right here.